Chris from Punk and Paisley back with another video. In today's video, I'm going to answer a question nobody asked. I do that a lot in life. I do that all the time. Ask my wife. I do that constantly. Now I'm going to do it again for you on today's video, which is what are the top 10 items that you have found, records that you have found in a thrift store in your life. Thrift shopping. Now, I'm not talking flea markets. That could be another video. I'm certainly not talking record stores or record fairs. And I'm not talking vintage shops, that sort of thing. I'm talking like they have records, they have books, they have ties, they have canes and walkers, and you don't really want to know why they have those, why they're used, that sort of thing. Furniture. They've just got everything. They're an outright thrift store, and things are cheap. What are the 10 best items that I've found? Now, I have, the last almost 20 years, I've primarily made a living selling used books and used records online. I've been flipping things and been looking more in the last 20 years with a flipper's eye toward items that you might find in a thrift store. And also, my tastes in music have expanded. I started just with the punk rock and hardcore stuff in the 80s when I was a teen, and that expanded to garage and psychedelia and classic rock. And I also eventually got more interested in jazz and blues and other forms of music. So I get a little sick thinking about the fact that I've probably been shopping for records in thrift stores for about 35 years now. And there were probably a good 10 or 15 really good years on the front end of that when I may have been flipping past things that were that I turned my nose up at the time that now I realize are classics and or that I could have made a nice chunk of change on if I weren't personally interested in them. But we'll focus on the things that I have found. Amando den Spitten. I know to pronounce it that way because I had 3 years of high school in German. This is the only krautrock that I've ever found in a thrift store. And that was this is about 10 years ago in the suburbs of Philadelphia, where I'm from the city of Philadelphia. This was in the northern suburbs in a Christian thrift store. I probably paid $1 plus applicable sales tax for it. It's a promo copy of Made in Germany. It's got the promo sticker. The cover's seen better days, but the record itself is in beautiful shape because I think that it was not played more than once. I did buy another few. You remember these things. You remember when you find something good in a thrift store, what was with it. I remember I found some other early 70s rock that was pretty decent the same time I bought this, and at the time I was buying things to flip. And this one, obviously, I decided was a keeper. I've only one other time in my life found any krautrock in any capacity in a thrift store. I did about 10 years ago. I bought an entire, behind the case of a thrift store was an entire, somebody's folder of CDs with just the insert booklets and the CDs themselves. And the thrift store wanted something like $1 a disc, or it was something ridiculous, like $10 for the entire kit and caboodle of discs in the holder, a lot of basic stuff. But I was thinking of that as stock. And in there, one of the keepers for me was Neu, the first Neu album. Very cool find, and it was basically a near mint disc. So that's still in my collection now. Not vinyl. But still a cool find. My only other krautrock that I found at a thrift store. And I know to pronounce that Neu, which translates as new, again, because 3 years of high school German. Why it all pays off. Someday you're in a thrift store and you can pronounce the names of the CDs that you buy. Now, in ninth place, I do actually have a CD, cheating a little bit on the record's title. My apologies. And this is not a super rarity, and this is not anything that you couldn't, the super expensive that you couldn't buy online fairly easily. It's just the pure serendipity of it. And the staggering odds against me finding this in a thrift store. About 5 years ago, I was looking at a Goodwill in South Philly. Some of you already know the place I'm talking about. Looking at the CDs, uninspiring. There weren't that many of them. There were about 50 CDs. I probably already looked at the records. In with the CDs is the Love, Peace, and Poetry compilations. There was the disc for Uruguay. Now, the amazing things about this were, number one, what that just showing up in the thrift store, not the best odds. Number two, I was collecting Love, Peace, and Poetry. I have most of them. I have most of it on vinyl. I had one or two other CDs, and just about the only one that I was missing, and here it was in the thrift store, and it was the only one of the Love, Peace, and Poetry. It was the only psych. It was the only psych compilation. It was the only thing of any sort like that. There wasn't really any other rock. There wasn't anything that cool. And when that happens, and I'll talk about that again with the next record I'm going to move to, I have two working hypotheses on the likelihood of what's happening when you encounter the lone wolf cool item in the thrift store. Because we all know, you see a lot of times, you see it with people's book collections, and you see it with people's music collections that get dumped at a thrift store. You could tell the same person owned all these records. There are 35 classical guitar records in a row. Clearly, they all came in from the same person at the same time. There are 27 psychology books suddenly on the shelf that weren't here yesterday. Obviously, the same person's book collection was dropped off at the thrift store. That's kind of obvious. But then you get these lone wolf items where it's one of a kind, and you wonder how it gets there. And I've thought about this for years. I've spent too much time, too much of my brain power, the gears turning has gone into thinking of how this happens. I think there are two possibilities. I think one is that a person who is finding themselves musically a little bit adventurous is trying something out. Hey, it's psychedelic music. That's cool. Let me give this a shot. And they listen to it and they think, oh no, that's not for me. And it goes in the bottom, it gets filed away with the CDs. They never listen to it again. Eventually they move apartments or something, and it just gets dumped at the thrift store. So that's one possibility. And it's an anomaly in their collection, and that's how it ends up there. My other working hypothesis when you find one of these things is that there were actually, maybe the entire set of Love, Peace, and Poetry on CD was there 15 minutes earlier, and somebody picked them all out and either missed it or already had it. So my two working hypotheses at the thrift store, when you find one good item, it's either an anomaly in that person's collection, or somebody beat you to it and there were 50 good things and they got all picked out. Any ideas? If anybody has any other ideas for what's going on, leave them in the comments. My next item, I found this 20 years ago at a thrift store. I think it was in a particularly bad neighborhood in Philadelphia. We have a lot of those. Easy listening crud, wall to wall, hundreds of records. And I pick out of there the Bodywell Music Machine. It's the Music Machine. This is one of my favorite 60s garage and psych bands. I couldn't believe that this was there. It's not in good shape. The record's actually in nice shape. The record is a solid VG+. The cover is in bad shape. It has some water, as we would say in Philadelphia, water damage on the back. But my hypothesis on this one, and it's got a little remainder drill hole. My hypothesis on this one is that somebody was filling out their easy listening collection, because there was a lot of easy listening, and they saw this happy cover. And it's like, oh, it's whimsical. There's a guy, and he's in a big machine. It's the Music Machine. Maybe they were thinking like, a little smile for me, the flying machine. It's going to be some light pop I can relax to. They put the needle on once, and we're like, oh God, no. And it gets thrown in the back of the the record collection, and ends up at the thrift store. Sits there for 12 years until I come along. This was within the last 2 years, maybe. This is in the last 2 years. I found this, I forget which thrift store, but it was in the Philadelphia area. It's Pequod. Pequod is a harder, early 70s, 70-ish. It gets described as a psych rock band. and that has a remainder drill hole as well. It's in better shape overall than the Binding Wall Music Machine. I think I have this up for sale right now on Discogs for $70 or $80 or the equivalent, and that's a good find. That's a nice find. There was another record that belongs on this list that I'm not remembering the title, and maybe somebody can help me with it. And if I think of it, I'll make another video. But what really belongs near the top of my all-time top 10 list, I had found a private pressing early 70s psych rock album that I put up for sale. It sold for a few $100s. I would have kept it if it weren't worth a few $100s, and if I weren't making a living selling things on the internet, that would have been a keeper. And it's a one-word title, which is also the name of the band. It's one word. It's not the something. It might begin with M. It's not the Morgan record with an EN on the end. It's not Morgan. It's something of that caliber that I found it. I can't remember the title of the band, and I don't have the record because I sold it, or else it would have gone on this list. So there's your Phantom number 11. In sixth place, I've got this one out right now for about $150 on Discogs. It's an early pressing of the Grand Bond Organization, The Sound of 65. The title tells you what year this was, 1965. Kind of hard to believe. It's in mono. Grand Bond Organization. This record marks the breakthrough of the unique and exciting music of the Grand Bond Organization. Now, it will bring wider appreciation for their startling fusion of rhythm and blues and modern jazz, which until now only club and concert audiences have experienced. So this isn't something you expect to trip over every day in a thrift store. And I don't remember which thrift store. I do remember that I bought a bunch of records that day, which were somebody's like 60s, 70s rock collection. Nothing else was as interesting or good as this. Ron and Shirley, Rock and Scroll. This is a private pressing Christian. It gets described as psychedelic rock, which might be pushing it a little bit. This is from about 74. I believe. If this record were recorded maybe 2 years earlier, I think the production and the style of music would have been even more something that I would enjoy. But this is private pressing, New Jersey, described as psych rock and rock. There's some good stuff, and they have song titles like Backslider, Christian Man, Jude, Soul Winner, Bad Love is a Demon. And it's signed by Ron himself, who seems to have been a pastor in New Jersey for many years, using music in many cases for to spread the message. It's also got the Deptford, New Jersey, which is in South Jersey, stamp of how to contact them and the guy's phone number in the 609 area code. On the fence about keeping this one. I have it up for sale right now on Discogs for something like $150. And I'm willing to part with it for that if somebody wants to pay that, but definitely a cool find. I have not found a whole lot of, I've found most of the Jesus Freak good stuff that I've found in thrift stores has been on the folk side, or people might even call it loner folk, or that kind of thing side of things, and not as much. I haven't been as lucky with the Christian rock, but Rock and Scroll definitely on the short list. In fourth place, we've moved to Italy. I live in Italy now. I'm speaking to you from Italy right now. And probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I found that at an Italian thrift store for something like €3. I think the guy charged me a prog and electronic Bleep Blurp album from 1979. It's Francesco Cabbiati. The album is Mirage. There is a re-release of this, but this is the original. It could not possibly be much cleaner. You see that cover and you know it's a keeper automatically. I had not heard of this before. When you're in Italy, a lot of the things you want to look for in a thrift store are their 60s rock is okay. It's mostly covers, and I'll probably do some videos about that upcoming in the future. But it's in the 70s where Italy really shines with the prog rock, psych prog, and really elaborate prog releases. Italy is definitely a prog heavy country. This kind of fits in with that. It's a very cool find. I have this up for sale right now. It's over €100. Not in my main wheelhouse of collection. I mean, I'm more of a punk garage psych guy. I will listen to some prog stuff. I'm not against it. In third place, we have kind of a tie. Now, these two go together. These releases definitely go together, and this definitely has to do with being from Philadelphia and this band being from the Philadelphia area. I think I found two of those. I believe I've sold one in the past. But this is from, I think, 1972. This is a private pressing release called Dialogue, which we could call psych pop, or, light psych rock pop. Dialogue is two guys. One of the two guys here, one of these two dudes, is named Kurt Shore. And Kurt Shore, I found a test pressing of his, I believe it's from the 70s. I'm the one who has one. I am the person who heard this. It's pop, somewhat experimental pop. Some people might say light psych pop. There are no other copies of this. If you see this on Discogs, this is my copy. I'm the one who listed it. I have it up for an obscene amount of money. And it is the Kurt Shore from Dialogue. So there are people who pay over $100 for a clean copy of the Dialogue album. If those people are interested in Kurt Shore, who went on, by the way, Kurt Shore's been a songwriter for some Philadelphia, Eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey-based bands, Pretty Poison, and a couple other bands that you may have heard of from southeastern Pennsylvania and southern Jersey. He's written songs for through the years. So he's a known songwriter, not so much a known song recorder. And you can send me an obscene amount of money on Discogs, and I will send you the test pressing of the Kurt Shore album that never came out. The next two, I don't have. We're going to be putting up one of these two sides. We're going to be putting up little graphic of these because I sold both of them. But these are things I definitely would have kept if I were not making a living selling things on the internet. There's always that push and pull. In second place, number two, Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. By some accounts, the world's best-selling jazz record. I think some people say the Brubeck Quartet's Take 5, which I've certainly found clean copies of in thrift stores and flipped, and I have my own clean copy. I always buy a clean copy of a Brubeck album if I find it. And of course, it's a no-brainer that you should always buy Miles Davis in at least decent condition if you find it at a thrift store. We were in Camden, New Jersey. I think it was technically still Camden. It was the eastern side of Camden. And there were already some people who were like, whoa, because, I'm from Philadelphia, which has some pretty rotten neighborhoods, but people from Philadelphia hear Camden and we go, ooh, that's scary. But eastern Camden, or maybe toward Lindenwold, I think it was technically just about where Camden starts. There was a Goodwill, which I think maybe has since closed. Now, I haven't lived in the United States for about a year, and we probably hadn't been there for a year and a half, but it looked shut down the last time we drove by. We pull in there, not the best Goodwill, kind of a, even among Goodwills, not the best Goodwill. And this is one where they hadn't been hiking the prices yet, like a lot of Goodwills have done. I've seen some horrifying videos online of, every item of clothing costs $15 to $20 at the Goodwill now, even though it's fast fashion that you could get down the street at a retail outlet for $5 less. Yeah, Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. They had 200 or 300 records in bins, all junk, trashed, easy listening, not even interesting easy listening, not even exotica or anything. Some orchestra covering Mantovani, covering the themes from the films that won the Oscar. And there's a Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, which I would have thought I would have kept just for myself to have a copy and give it a listen if it were in decent shape and just a run-of-the-mill copy. But I pulled the record out, and it had the right number of eyes. It was a Columbia release. I forget if it might have been the 6 eye. And doing more investigation on it, Cannonball Adderley's name was misspelled, and 2 of the tracks had their titles transposed, which was easier to do with instrumentals. And this meant that it was an early pressing of one of the most important albums in like near mint minus condition. The cover was like VG plus VG, and I put it up for auction on eBay. I think I sold that it was over $400. That was a good find, and it was $1. It was $1 plus New Jersey sales tax, so 8% or whatever. That was good stuff. Flipping through, I'm in a Christian thrift store north of the city, and see a really interesting, very cool cover art, record cover for a jazz album or a jazz concept spoken word album by a guy named Fred Katz, I believe. I'll look this up and try and get it right for you on the video. And I was interested in that. I thought that would be really cool. And you always want to check the conditions of things. I still haven't heard that album, by the way. I have the cover, but I still don't have the record. You'll know why in a moment. Slip the record out because you want to check the condition. You also want to check at a thrift store that it's the correct record. Sometimes people slip the wrong record in the case, so you always the cover, you always want to check that. And it wasn't a Fred Katz record at all. It was a test pressing from 1969 of a Philadelphia psych rock band called Baxter's Glass Eye. And there's a whole interesting backstory with Baxter's Glass Eye. I believe it's a Mark Twain reference. I'll look that up for you to make sure I got that right. And they never released this album. This was a very rough, probably like 4-track bedroom recording, garage recording, literal garage recording of these guys who had a psych band who apparently opened for people in Philadelphia, playing some really heavy, I think maybe even heavier than they intended because it was such a raw recording. Like proto-goth in some places. It was heavy rock psych with organ and these really, there were, I believe, 8 tracks in total, so fairly long tracks, and very rough demo recordings, said test pressing on it, had a copyright date of 1969 that I think was handwritten. I'm going to be putting up images, and I was overjoyed. I thought this would be cool. I had never heard of such a band before. I bring it home. It's very dusty. I gave it an okay cleaning, put the needle on the record, and it exceeded any possible expectation that I could have had. Just wild, very raw, scratchy because it was not a record in good shape. Not at all. Like maybe VG, maybe. And was pretty excited about that. But also I was selling things online for a living. So I thought I'll put a minimum bid, a basement bid on it on eBay and see where it goes. And it's sold for about $500 to France, to a guy in France who said that he also messaged me and said that he was going to give it a proper high-end cleaning and it was going to be released as a CD. And I thought that's cool. And I was asking, can I get, if this comes out as a copy, if you license this or whatever, or if you don't, would you send me a copy of the CD? I'd love to hear something cleaned up or something that you do digitally to try and clean up some of the scratches out of it and everything. And I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything for a few years. And then I saw, I put up, in order to push the record sale on eBay, because you want people to bid on it, and they're not going to bid on something they never heard of just from my say-so of a description. I took some clips. I did some low bit rate because that's all I could do at the time. This is more than 10 years ago, I think. So I did some low bit rate sampling of the record and put that up as a YouTube video that might still be up. You could probably find the Baxter's Glass Eye video, and I'll try and link to it for you. That's an old account of mine. That was just like a burner YouTube account I had, and didn't hear anything for a few years. Went back to it. At some point, I looked back at the video, and one of the guys from the band somehow found it and started having a conversation with some people online. And one of the big 60s, 70s garage psych reissue labels were in touch with members of the band. I think most of them were still surviving. And this is just a few years ago. And I followed a little bit of that correspondence that you could track down with a search engine on the web. And it looked like there was a particular pretty big name in the garage psych reissue field that was talking to the guys about cleaning it up and doing the reissue and doing licensing it, doing the package, doing it properly. And it turns out that one or two guys in the band, even though the guy who was corresponding was into it, he needed the permission of everybody in the band, and there were one or two holdouts who just didn't want it out there. I don't know if it's because they made changes in their lives where now they're either, it's 50 years later. So for whatever reasons, they didn't want to be connected to freaky garage psych band from 1969 flying their freak flag. So never came out. So I seem to be the person, I'm probably one of about 5 people or less than 10 people certainly who's heard this thing since it was recorded in 1969. I have a really poor quality, low bit rate rip of the whole record that I've listened to sometimes. And I'm like the one that has that material. Perhaps I'll make it available and put it out there in this format or something so that people can actually hear it. But that is far and away the best thing, the coolest thing that in 35 or so years of looking in, I've been looking in record stores for more than 40 years for records, but it's probably been about 35 that I've been looking in thrift stores for records, and that is Baxter's Glass Eye would be my number one for the coolest thing that I ever found. There may be a follow-up to this video. I'm certainly going to do a flea market one because that's sort of a different category and I have a different set of stuff for that. But I'd love to hear your best find. Leave it in the comments, your best find or 10 best. Or if you want to do a response video, that's awesome. I'd love to hear it. I'd like to know what's still out there. Things are still out there, folks. If you put the time in, if you look through those crates, if you look through the stacks, there is stuff here that I found 20 years ago. When there was less competition in the thrift stores, both from flippers and the general public looking to fill in their collections. But even today, there's still things that show up at the thrift store that are still pretty cool, that are worth something and or worth something to you. So until next time, kids, I'm going to end it as always. Keep on rocking in the unfree world.